I'm Dr. Jim Coyle, and in this tutorial, we're going to focus on how resilience and life course perspectives are helpful when social workers are looking at the life challenges that affect their clients. We're assigned for this particular aspect of our class had Ann Maston, who gave a very good overview of how research has kind of described what resilience is and the factors associated with it, and is also proposing different ways that we can improve resilience. The reading on the life course approach talks to us about how important it is to recognize that different developmental transitions are going to be points in time where people are going to struggle and people are going to have more likelihood to have some issues affect them because they're trying to get through this. If you have not already watched the following videos, I'm asking you to pay attention to these because this is an overview and kind of takes the place for me doing a lot more lecturing about these particular points. The short videos from the Center on Developing Child at Harvard University do a really good job of giving you an idea of what is resilience and what's the basic science and how resilient is built. In terms of the life course approach, it gives you a number of examples of how life course, people's experiences, I should say, over time are going to influence their well-being and how that can be very different depending upon what the experiences that they have. If you need to pause this video and to go and view the other videos, the links are in the comments. Okay, what do you know or what have you learned about resilience? Simply speaking, resilience is a process in which someone's able to use protective factors to overcome the impact of risk factors, leading to a positive outcome, which is often thought about in terms of a positive developmental outcome. Research on resilience has identified risk and protective factors at the individual, family, and community levels. And so that's something to pay attention to. And resilience-based practice focuses on reducing the risk factors and increasing the protective factors. Okay, research has noted a number of resilience factors. In terms of risk factors, those are the things that kind of affect people that generally will predict a negative outcome. Individually, this can be a poor sense of self-control or emotionality. In families, it can be drug use, poor parenting, or child rearing, family conflict, abuse and neglect. On the community level, it can be limited community resources or low socioeconomic status. On the other hand, protective factors can often help people manage the impact of the risk factors. So individual protective factors include the ability to control or a sense of that you have control over your life, a relationship with competent adults, pro-social skills, and a sense of humor. Family factors can be good parenting skills and well-defined family roles and responsibilities, where community protective factors can be a sense of belonging in the community and being part of the community, having a social network of peers. When I think about how resilience occurs, I was very impressed with reading about Emmy Werner's 40-year study of the Kauai 1955 birth cohort. She worked with these with a group of people born on the island of Kauai for 40 years in order to look at what were the risk factors that were occurring, what were the protective factors, what were the outcomes. She found some really interesting things. First of all, 1/3 of high-risk children, and she identified high risk as meaning 4 or more risk factors by the age of 2 were able to successfully cope with life adversity. She also found that early childhood resilience is very important since children can develop chains of either positive or negative adaptation. And positive adaptation tended to predict future positive adaptation, while negative adaptation tended to predict future negative adaptation. She also really showed that recovery is possible at any stage of development. And that's an important element of hope that I think is part of resilience, that it doesn't make any difference how things have gone in the past. You can recover, you can get better, you can become more resilient at any stage in your life. Werner and Smith in their publications have shown a number of different resilience pathways. And I think that they're helpful because they give you certain things to focus on depending upon where a person is in terms of their ongoing pathways. This is very similar to the life course events that we're going to be talking about too. The pathways to resilience during childhood tend to focus on an easy to deal with temperament, a sense of autonomy, a positive relationship with a caretaker like a mother, and social skills, an internal locus of control, which means that even if everything is going crazy all around you, you have a sense that I can handle it, I can get through it. One of the important things that I take from this is that one of the best preventive things that we can do when we're working with families is to help young mothers to bond with their children, particularly infants, to have good relationships and strongly strengthen those relationships. That's a very important thing to be able to do when you're working with families with young children. Now, for adolescents, resilience pathways are often, the primary elements are associated with emotional support outside the family, either from adult mentors or for peers. Having an achievement orientation in school can be really helpful. One of the things that this reminds me of is that when I was in practice and I had teenagers, coming to counseling for me because they're having problems in school and they're acting out and everything. One of the things that I noticed was that some teenagers seem to have very good relationships with the assistant principals in their schools, which those were the people who were basically doing the discipline and taking care of the problems. They said hello to them. They were able to talk with them, and they always had kind of socialized with them. And this actually made it easier for them because the assistant principals were often able to give them a benefit of a doubt because they knew the kid. And they knew that this particular person was somebody who they could say, hey, you got to do better. And they would say, yeah, and they'd look really bad and everything. And they really would try. That's to me, was a resilience factor that was really important. In adulthood, when adults are focused on career or job success, that's a helpful thing. For adult women, having close friends and interested in helping others seem to be related to resilience. I know that when I was working with adults who were having difficulties, what I found is that a sense of I can do this, a sense that I can get through this, as well as a sense that they would be able to accept help, if not exactly ask for it. And, and even so it was important to look at who do they have in terms of their relationships, in terms of mentors. Even the relationship with the counselor can sometimes be an important thing to take into consideration here. Werner and Smith talked about 3 roots of resilience, which I think are really helpful. First of all, the protective factors have a more generalized effect on the quality of adaptation. And this was kind of something that I found in my own research of families, that when I looked at resilience in families, I found that families tended to have resilience in many different ways or resilience in few ways. And so one of the things that I came from that is when you look at resilience factors, the protective factors, one of the things you want to do is start with whatever seems to be strongest and go with that because that's their strength and they have more of a possibility of having success. That's something that can be really important. Individual dispositions and competencies are strongly related to the number of stressful life events. This suggests that working with people about their coping mechanisms is really important. Emotional support from others is a really important thing, and that often that turns things around. Once again, helping people look at who's in your life. How can this be somebody who can help you kind of feel more confident in yourself? Ask yourself, how would a resilience perspective influence your client assessment, the interventions you choose? Once again, jot down 2 or 3 ideas or insights about this, because we're going to be, again, working on this in an in-class exercise. The life course perspective is the other thing that we're going to talk about in this particular tutorial. And if you remember, the key principles are that there are certain things that happen over time which are different depending upon what's going on in your environment and your experiences. So historical time and geographic place make a difference, and it's something you take into consideration. Timing in lives is important. People have more difficulty during developmental transitions. Another aspect of that is when I was working with children who are having trauma related to some type of abuse, neglect, or sexual abuse of some sort, one of the things is we would get to the point where they seem to be doing okay, but I would remind the parents or caretakers that when they go through developmental traumas, or excuse me, developmental transitions, they're likely to have this happen again. And so it's something to really pay attention to. That this is not something that people go through individually. There's a linked lives of interdependent relationships, and there's also a sense of human agency. People aren't just stuck to kind of respond to what's going on in the environment, what's going on around them. They do have the ability to choose and make some choices about what's going to be helpful for them, very similar to what we talked about resilience. Again, jot down 2 or 3 thoughts or insights that you have to use this in an exercise that we're going to have in class. So save these notes. Now, the exercise is going to be giving you the opportunity to choose a life challenge, and that's perhaps a life challenge that you're going to work on in your assignments. And how can you use resilience to understand that life challenge? How can you use life course to understand that life challenge? And how does that suggest different ways that you're going to be doing interventions? So it's taking what we're learning theoretically and saying, how can we use that when we are working with clients? As I've mentioned before, kind of this particular tutorial by asking yourself, what have you learned? From the readings, from the videos, from what I have mentioned, what are the things you have? What are the questions you have? How are you going to bring that back into class in order to get the information that you need? So keep this in mind, grab your notes, and we're going to talk more about this during class.